Now it's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation.
What are you people? On dope?
Where you can toke.
I inhale frequently.
Or you can talk.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
Or you can toke and talk.
10 federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
While we talk about toke on Toker Talk Radio.
So, by the way, when it comes to pot, if you're 40 years old, you live in a log cabin in Oregon, you got 12 giant pot plants in your backyard, have a ball.
Live from beautiful Portland, Oregon at Rolla J Studios.
Hey, this is great.
Just not cannabis.
Plus your calls live at 971-533-7111.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listening to Enema Man and Snoopy Poop Dog.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel? Gateway theory doesn't work. It's a reality.
Holland, is it real? Don't tease me.
We're locking up people that take a couple of puffs of marijuana, and the next thing you know, they got 10 years.
And now, here's your host, the guru of ganja graphics, the sultan of sativa statistics, and the worst nightmare of a reefer mad prohibitionist. A polite, perspicacious, productive pothead with a propensity for PowerPoint. Radical Russ Belville.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It's time for Toker Talk Radio, and if you're joining us on the replay, you just missed Chief Greenbud's new tune, I Bake, coming up on the Chief Greenbud 4. But it was an exclusive one-time live play, so we couldn't include it in the Toker Talk Radio replay. So if you're wondering why the clock is off or why you didn't hear the song that was just being played, that's why. Sorry, you got to listen live sometimes, but we do what we can. Big thanks to Chief Greenbud and to Lush LED Lighting for their sponsorship of his tour and their sponsorship of 420 Radio. We really appreciate it, Matt, and all the guys out there at Lush LED Lighting. Looking forward to Chief's new tour. Great guy, and we are giving away tickets to his performance at the Bluebird Theater on June 1st, this Sunday. If you want to see Chief Greenbud, I've got tickets for you. Now, you got to be, someone who's able to go to it, right? Don't email me from Maine. Unless, you're going to fly to Denver and go see the show, right? But we got free tickets to Chief Greenbud, and all you got to do is go to our contact page at 420radio.org/contact, or just use the menu at the top. And on the contact page, just send me an email with the subject, I want Chief Greenbud tickets. And we will send a ticket and a plus one until they're gone. We've got 20 to give away. So if you want to go to the show, send me an email. All of our Denver listeners out there, podcast listeners, first come, first serve, and we will get you on the will call list for Chief Greenbud on Sunday at the Bluebird Theater. Now, wanted to talk a little bit, speaking of Denver, I already brought this up in the Behind the Headlines, but, Behind the Headlines is a little compressed, and I wanted a chance to just rant a little bit about this Colorado Symphony Orchestra thing. It's just the funniest thing. I have this saying that I'll use quite often, which is, marijuana is unique in its ability to addle the brains of those that do not use it. Okay? And it's a saying that basically means the people who don't smoke pot are crazier than those of us who do. And some of their crazy, irrational fear of pot smoking leads to some of the craziest, irrational results. And this Colorado Symphony Orchestra thing is a perfect example of it. If you don't know, what happened is the orchestra wanted to have a fundraiser where people could bring their own pot and smoke it on the patio. And now, Amendment 64 says you can't openly and publicly smoke pot, so they weren't going to have it open where anyone could see it, right? It was going to be in a closed area. And it wasn't going to be public because it was in a private venue. You had to buy a ticket to get into this private venue. And it didn't violate the Clean Air Act as far as indoor smoking goes because it was an outdoor patio that's still secluded from the public, right? So it's not open, it's not public, it's not violating clean air laws. So they wanted to move forward with it, and the city of Denver howled. They screamed, "Oh no, you can't do this. We can't have a place in private where adults can gather and smoke pot outdoors where no one can see them while they listen to classical music. My God, if we did such a thing, we'd set a precedent. We'd set a precedent that then any bar could just have pot smoking. And that would be bad somehow. to have pot smoking where people are gathered. Oh, sure, they can drink beer and alcohol and shots and liquor and, they can get stupid drunk in these establishments, but we can't have pot there. And part of their defense was, well, Amendment 64 never legalized such things. Amendment 64 never purposefully allowed there to be, as they called it, a proliferation of establishments, commercial establishments, where people could gather and smoke pot. And I always thought that was ludicrous from the first moment I heard it, because I read the text of Amendment 64, and in its purposes and intents, the part that says, hey, here's the reason we're doing this, was for individual freedom, was to promote freedom. What kind of individual freedom is it if you can only do it in your home with the curtains drawn? You remember there's at one point where the city of Denver was going to ban people smoking pot on their own property if it could be seen by other people. That's how crazy this THC phobia, this cannabiphobia goes, is that we want to control whether people are smoking pot at their own house because somebody might see it. And gosh, if someone saw someone smoking pot, they might think that pot smokers aren't evil demons and pot smoking isn't this terrible thing. It becomes this little Gordian knot, this Mobius strip, if you will, of reasoning. We can't have people be seen smoking pot because then people will think pot smoking is okay. And if people think pot smoking is okay, they might smoke pot, and then people might see them and they might think it's okay. It's just ludicrous. It's crazy, right? So the crazy result we got from this is even better. The orchestra went ahead and had its concert. They just did it VIP list only. They refunded all the public tickets. And then they made a VIP list and sent invitations just to those people to come into this private venue and smoke pot on a patio where no one could see them. That made all the difference, folks. That's all that mattered. As long as it wasn't the public selecting themselves to go to a private place where pot is smoked, and instead the private place selecting the people who could come and smoke pot, made all the difference in the world. I don't know how. I don't know why that makes any difference. It's still a building where people are smoking pot. We'll talk more about this when we come back from the break. Thanks for joining us.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the best way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney, Omar Figueroa." Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com. 420 Radio, freeing your mind 24 hours a day. When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you don't just want any attorney. You want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Lauren Vasquez knows the details of California marijuana law from both a personal and professional angle. Lauren Vasquez rose from the ranks of college normal activist to become one of the Bay Area's best marijuana lawyers. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email fireduplawyer@gmail.com. The number again is 855-MMJ-LAWS, 855-665-5297 for your fired-up lawyer, Lauren Vasquez. Lauren Vasquez is an activist attorney you can trust. Call today.
Welcome back, everybody. 15 after the hour. That's Tom Christie playing in the background with Marijuana Mountain. I'm Radical Russ, your guide through the world of drug reform, starting with marijuana. And I want to make sure that that's clear. People have asked me sometimes, why did I call it the Russ Belville Show? Right? Why? Aside from the fact that I'm in it. And why? But why not, the marijuana show or the marijuana legalization show or the legalization show or whatever, right? And it's because I reserve the right to have an opinion on lots of stuff, more than just marijuana. Marijuana is my primary focus right now because I believe it is the big battle that has to be won in order to start winning some of the other big battles out there. One of my big battles is against drug testing. Another is against the imposition of prohibitionary laws on any drug users out there. So my mission is a lot bigger than just marijuana, but I'm assigned to the marijuana battlefield right now. So the show is always going to be primarily focused on marijuana. But from time to time, I may take a detour. And this is a little detour that we're going to be calling Off the Warpath. I haven't got a audio clip for it yet, so we're just going to go with the fanfare. But Off the Warpath is going to be a segment that I'm going to do from time to time and try to do at least twice a week, where I tackle a subject that's not in the drug war. Get it? Off the Warpath, right? So today I wanted to talk about this crazy guy. That's the only way I can describe him. He's crazy. This Elliot Rodger. If you haven't heard the tragic story, this 22-year-old is accused of having stabbed to death 3 people in his home, then taken his Glock and Sig Sauer handguns with him in his car on a shooting spree through a sorority row at University of California, Santa Barbara, UCSB, shooting at co-eds. Do we see? I'm even dating myself there saying co-eds. Anyway, sorry. Shooting at female students and killed a few, injured more, ended up wrecking his car into a bicyclist, which detoured him from being able to do his final thing, which he wanted to go to this sorority house and shoot up all the sorority girls. And he ended up shooting himself. And, this is this big tragedy. Turns out, interestingly enough, he is the son of one of the second unit directors of the Hunger Games, right? So he's got some Hollywood tie-in on this as well. Now, this kid, this 22-year-old, I say kid because I'm 46, right? So this kid, this 22-year-old, had written this manifesto. He wrote this 141-page treatise. And it's on the web. You can read the whole thing. And I did. I didn't read the whole thing, but I've gotten good at scamming through things since I've read so much every day. So I got the gist of all of what he wrote. And it was interesting that he had written this like a recount or retelling of his life. He had actually sectioned it out 0 to 5 years, 5 to 9 years, 9 to 13 years, how old he was, right? And in it, you see this portrait developing of this kid becoming psycho, becoming sociopathic. And in it, there's a whole bunch. He's got, his biggest thing is misogyny. This feeling that none of the girls, he at 22, he described himself as a kissless virgin. I was a kissless virgin, never held a girl's hand. And he built up this resentment over the males who were able to, I'm 16 and here's this 12-year-old who's losing his virginity and how unfair the world is because I'm a gentleman and the women, they all give their sex to these unthinking brutes. And so the guy's clearly nuts, right? And he speaks of wanting to eradicate the world of sex and put women in concentration camps. And he gets really, psycho-misogynist toward the end of this thing. But within it, as I'm reading this thing, and let me also not excuse or bypass the fact that he's racist and homophobic too. Very racist and saying, this black boy, this inferior black had gotten a girl and, he wrote some terrible stuff. But at the core of it, I could hear the wails and cries of so many of me and my nerdy friends growing up. And I can remember, being, in this group of nerdy guys who all felt undateable and unworthy, and how society's expectations of masculinity, that, you have to have a girlfriend, who you don't have a girlfriend, there's something wrong with you, must be gay, right? The way that we indoctrinate and socialize our boys in society. And I'm not meaning to discount anything about the women's side of this at all. I'm speaking as a man, so I got to come at it from my point of view, right? But the way that we raise boys doesn't really speak to masculine values outside of being the toughest, the strongest, being the football star, and having the pretty girl. And then there's all sorts of issues around this that I want to talk a little bit about. But just to wind it up just a little bit, reading this guy was extremely scary, and it kind of has opened our eyes to the misogyny in our culture, and I want to talk about that when we come back.
Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Hey Tokers and Tokettes, Radical Russ here to introduce you to my friend Matt and all the staff at Lush LED Lighting. Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED Lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. If you thought LEDs were meet the tech of today, Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Let's just say I appear at a lot of events with the masters of indoor horticulture, and the harvests I saw from Lush LED Lighting were big, tight, sticky, and very effective. Check out LushLEDlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Double your rewards and lower your expenses with Lush LED Lighting.
Marijuana, do you wanna? Mary, do you wanna? Tonight.
As marijuana goes mainstream, you need to be armed with the facts. Nobody can teach you better than Dr. Mitch Earlywine, PhD. You may know Dr. Mitch from his column in High Times magazine or his weekly appearance on the Russ Belville Show. Dr. Mitch is also the author of some of the best books on marijuana science, culture, history, and health, including Understanding Marijuana, Parents' Guide to Marijuana, Pot Politics, and more. Visit Amazon.com and search for Mitch Earlywine, that's EARLEYWINE, and order your books today. You can also contact Dr. Mitch by email at 420research@gmail.com. 420radio.org is proud to replay Weed Nerd with Subcool from the Emerald Triangle of Northern California. One of the internet's most popular grow shows is on 420 Radio. Pick up grow tips from the master behind multiple award-winning strains from Team Green Avenger. Catch the replays Tuesday at 1 Pacific here on 420radio.org.
Pass it around, right around when I'm done, get money. Roll up a fat one and pass it around. I love you, Mary Jane. People in the streets see me bopping my head while I'm checking out the rapper and the rhyme.
Music from K-Stone, that's Puff the Magic Dragon right here on 420 Radio. I'm Radical Russ. Welcome back to Toker Talk Radio, our little hour where we just hang out and talk. We're tokers and we talk, and that's what it's about. You know, when I named this show Toker Talk Radio, I really wanted it to be talk radio for tokers, which doesn't necessarily mean we always talk about marijuana. There's lots of things we're interested in. We're a very diverse and eclectic group, we cannabis consumers. So I've gone off the warpath on this one, on this Elliot Rodger and his massacre that he did out there in University of California, Santa Barbara. And, it's forced me in reading the responses to this to really address misogyny and sexism, right? Of which I am willing to admit I exhibit. It's going to be a strange, new world for some of us. I'm speaking as a 46-year-old straight white male. So like I am like the epitome of white male privilege in this country. So I'm willing to admit that I've got blind spots and I've got assumptions that have been built up from my perspective growing up as a privileged white male, I guess. So I try to learn and I try to adjust my behaviors and I try to adjust my language and thinking as I come to new knowledge and new facts. And it has happened before for me. I've come to learn a lot about the gay rights movement, having written for a gay and lesbian blog and having worked with transgender activists and becoming friends with many, many people. And a lot of my thinking on those issues changed. I used to be one of those civil union guys. What's wrong with civil unions? And then I kind of learned that, no, that's bullshit. That's second class citizenship. And I didn't understand transgendered people, right? Thought it was some sort of confusion, right? Learned the lesson that genitals and brains both control your gender. And that was an interesting thing to talk to someone who'd been through that. So as we go through this reflection upon this clearly misogynist massacre that this Elliot Rodger, because he wrote about it and he posted in videos how he was going to have his day of retribution. He was going to shoot the women and the men they give their sex to because they're unworthy of this attention, and why he was a 22-year-old kissless virgin and blah, blah, blah. So there's been a lot of reaction to this and a lot of Twitter reaction in particular on a hashtag called Yes All Women. Yes All Women. So hashtag Yes All Women. And what it was is it's a hashtag for that people have been posting their experiences as women and living as women that happen to every woman, right? That maybe we don't, I don't as a male think about. For example, one of the hashtags was hashtag Yes All Women, because giving a man a fake phone number is safer than telling him you're not interested in him. That kind of stunned me, right? I always thought the fake phone number thing was just a, trying to be nice to you thing. Never questioning why would they feel the need to have to be nice in that way, to lie to you? Well, because of the reactions they get from some men when they say they're not interested, and those men become abusive. Not necessarily physically violent, although sometimes that happens, but, call her name, slut, whore, whatever, when she's just saying, no, I'm not interested in you, right? There was a hashtag about because I've spent 19 years teaching my daughter how not to get raped. How much time have you spent teaching your son not to rape? That was pretty emotional reading that, and there's been a lot of articles I've been reading about this and trying to understand it. And it seems like the younger generation, I feel like I'm in one of those positions now where I'm the older generation, where people in their 20s understand, like they bandy about these terms, rape culture and friend zoning and what was the other one that I heard? I can't remember all the terms, but these are just natural terms of discussion, and to me they sound kind of foreign, and it leads me to thinking about all the behaviors I have and things I've said, and how much of that is influenced by this unconscious branding that we've been experiencing, how men throughout. But then, there's on one side that's like, yeah, so much of this is society telling men that they have to be this sort of way, or masculinity has to be this sort of thing. But there's another part of me that says, hold on, men and women are different, and our brains are different, and I believe men are hardwired for a certain type of, sexual patterning, right? There wouldn't be, billions of pornos and millions of strip clubs and, all of that if men weren't visually driven naturally. I can't believe that we just manufactured that. Okay. I think that's something that's natural for us. So as we approach this, as the cannabis community, we've often been accused of great levels of misogyny and sexism. For one, that just our population is male dominated. When you look at the population of people who have ever smoked marijuana, when you look at the surveys, ever smoked marijuana, it's like 54% men, 46% women. That's close, right? But then as you delve into the numbers and you start asking, how often you smoke pot, the more often you smoke pot, the more likely that you're male. To the point where you get to the daily pot smoker, At the daily pot smoker level, it's 68% male, 32% female. There's 2 male pot smokers at the daily level for every female pot smoker. So ladies, if you're looking for a fella, smoke more pot. And see, that's the kind of line I would just throw out there, and I think it's a joke. But now I'm in this position where I'm like, well, gee, is that terrible for me to say that? Am I being sexist? Am I embracing rape culture? I don't know, right? So it's this new wave of political correctness that we're all trying to surf here, trying to understand, what is sensitive, what is a joke, what's in bounds, what's out of bounds. It's a little frightening for me sometimes. I like to think that I'm a nice guy, though. I treat people well, with respect and such, but we'll see. Anyway, in our community, like I was saying, we're about 2 to 1 male to female. And so the natural result of that, the natural consequences of that have been for our magazines, our media, and our events to cater to a young male crowd. And that's when we get our, booty short girls and, the naked girls with the pasties on their boobs and all that kind of stuff to hawk a vapor pen or a dispensary. And this has been a debate that's gone on for a long time in the cannabis community. On the one side, it's like, this exploitation, this sexualization, fetishization that's going on. But on the other side, some people are like, well, hold on, these are adult women. They can choose to work any way they want to work, and, freedom and expression and liberty and blah, So this is a complex issue, and it's going to be interesting to see how the cannabis community works it out, because we're generally considered to be on the progressive tip as far as social movements and such. But on the other hand, we also have a high male demographic. And how well is it going to swing with that large male demographic? We have yet to see. We're and going back to this shooter, this Elliot Rodger, like I said, in reading it as a guy, while it was crazy, I could see it was, Chris Rock's old routine where he said, I don't condone what OJ did, but I understand it, right? And I don't condone what this guy did at all. But I understand the feelings that led him where he went to, right? That led to his attack. And I think it's feelings that lots of guys feel growing up. If you're not the high school quarterback, if you're not the successful and charming, cute guy. Growing up in my group of guys, there was 2 guys who were the cute guys. 2 or 3 of them, really. Who were the cute guys who did really well with women, losing virginity by the age of 13 or 14 and having dates and going to dances and stuff. Stuff that didn't really happen for me until I was like 17 or so, right? And I was in honor society, right? And I was a Dungeons and Dragons player. Okay, you can draw the picture, right? And I got to talk to a lot of these guys who were in worse predicaments than myself, and to hear their anguish and these feelings that they were never going to be lovable, they were never going to be any sort of a man, and I can see how that happens. All right, let's go to our phone lines and see what you think. I got a call here from the 541 area code. What's on your mind?
Hey, Russ, it's Justin.
Yeah,
How's
Justin. Doing good.
Hey, good. You mentioned about, the high school type and the masculine dude that all the girls like, and it's kind of true, but a lot of it is, I've seen cute girls with absolute dudes who are just trolls.
Yeah.
Ugly dudes, you know what I mean? So they're, women are less, they're less, shallow than males.
That could be.
In that sense. And, partners for, there's been huge pornification of the younger generations, in which, I'm not too removed from that, but a lot of the dudes that I know, they got their sex talk through Google.
Yeah. Yeah. But is that better than no sex talk at all that most of us got before Google? I don't know.
Because when you get those ideas, your sexual ideas from the internet and which is my wife works with junior high kids and high schoolers.
Okay.
And, man, that's where a lot of it's happening. And women, and honestly, your average woman does not like that sort of approach, if you know what I'm saying.
Uh-huh.
And so, I see where his frustration could be, but if also he was raised in that sort of generation,
yeah,
makes sense as well.
Yeah, and part of what he was writing in some of his treatise there was about how the unworthy guys that he saw as unworthy, that same thing, like these women will date these guys that aren't hunky or good looking. And this guy that was writing it wasn't, a troll by any means. He was a decent looking guy, right? And so that was confusing him as well. That was frustrating him as well. And he had this fantasy of being rich, that if he was wealthy, then he could attract a woman, right? And so all of these, I don't know how much of that is society that tells guys day after day that the successful guy on the TV is the one with the girl on it, the beautiful blonde on his arm, and it doesn't matter if he was the tech startup guy who made $1 billion or he's the high school football champ. That's what guys are supposed to be.
Yeah, totally. Well, women also don't want to struggle their whole lives, so I would understand how he could get the idea of that someone would want some security, but it's just also, man, it's just being 22. Oh, man, you just don't know shit.
Yeah.
So to have this treaty and make it so definite, there's definitely some mental illness. But anyway, that's my 2 cents.
All right,
thanks,
Justice.
Man. Have a good one.
All right, thanks, man. Thanks for calling in. Appreciate our calls here at 420 Radio. Phone number's right above my head there at 971-533-7111. We're going to take a short break, play some ads, pay some bills, and when we come back, we'll continue some Off the Warpath talk. Plus, I got some other weed stories to get to here on Toker Talk Radio.
It's simply business. It's simply business. It's simply business, why they won't let us grow. It's simply business.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
It's simply business. It's simply business. It's simply business, why they won't let us grow. It's simply business. It's simply business, why they won't let us grow. It's simply business.
Herb Thrasher from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. Now get ready for Herb Age Designs for the proud cannabis consumer. Herb Age Designs, lifestyle gear for the 420 friendly. Herb Age Designs, home of the famous lighter leash. Herb Age Designs, get your Herb Age t-shirts and hoodies and show your pride. Herb Age Designs, we've got frisbee golf discs and durable hemp gear. Herb Age Designs. We've got shot glasses, drinking glasses, coffee mugs, and beer cozies. Check us out on Facebook and online at herbagedesigns.com and follow Herb Age and Herb Thrasher on Twitter. We'll see you at this year's Hemp Fest. Crank it up.
Support the Russ Belville Show. Text the word Russ to 420-420 and connect with the National Cannabis Coalition. You can also send $10 to the Russ Belville Show right from your smartphone. That's Russ to 420-420. You're listening to Radical Russ on the Russ Belville Show.
.420 Radio, your ticket to Seattle Hemp Fest.
I'm a doctor.
I'm a lawyer.
I'm a journalist.
I'm a student.
I'm a teacher.
I'm a representative.
I have cancer.
The outdated laws of prohibition are more dangerous than the plant itself.
I lost my scholarship.
I was fired.
20 million arrests since 1965. This is getting ridiculous.
Our prisons are overcrowded with non-violent offenders.
We have the opportunity to change.
This is costing our country billions of dollars.
Making my family and I fight in a courtroom is difficult enough when I'm already fighting through chemotherapy.
There's no reason to be scared by tradition anymore.
We can stop this. We can stop this.
We are the American people.
We can stop this.
And you have our support.
We're old,
Young,
straight,
gay.
we're every race and nationality.
And we're not going to give up.
You can tax it.
You can regulate it.
Apply age restrictions.
you can create millions of new jobs.
We can save our economy.
President Obama?
It's time for legalization.
Legalization.
Yes.
We
can.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Music from Molly and Sonny Boy. That's Relax Your Mind. I'm Radical Russ, hanging out here live at Roll the J Studios. And remember, coming up next, we have got our Electric Bob's Boogaloo coming up, the experimental hip-hop episode. And then at 8 o'clock, we'll have the new episode of Electric Bob's Boogaloo. The, what is this new one that's coming up? I got to check this out in the studio shows. Let's see. Electric Bob's Boogaloo, the electronic hip-hop. All right, so experimental hip-hop first, followed by electronic hip-hop tonight at 8 o'clock. So you get that at 5 and 8, as usual, every Tuesday here on 420radio.org. We were talking about this shooting at the University of California, Santa Barbara, this misogynist shooting. It's opened up a lot of discussion about sexism and misogyny in our culture, something that we need to think about as well in the marijuana community, something that, we've been accused of more times than not at some of these events. But I think it's changing. I think as marijuana becomes a more mainstream business and that pressure to become a mainstream advertiser starts to hit some of these bigger companies, that will naturally kind of change this culture. But I wanted to talk about another part of this culture that is revealed by this. Of course, every time there's some sort of mass shooting in America, there is discussion of guns and how we treat guns in America. And I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on this one because we've gone rounds on it before, pardon the pun, on this issue of guns in America. I'll just state my position, right out front. I'm former National Guard. I grew up in families that hunt. I think guns are fun. I enjoy them for recreation and sport. I think they're great. I don't use them to kill things. Other people do for hunting and such, and that's fine. Other people like them for self-defense, and that's fine. I got nothing against guns. What I do have a problem with is crazy people with easy access to them. And that's the problem I'm always trying to solve, right? But immediately, if you try to broach anything like that, the one side of the argument will call you a gun grabber. Oh, you're a gun grabber. Hey, Second Amendment, my rights, damn it, my rights. And then on the other side, on the left, you have people that are, wanting to severely curtail Second Amendment rights, right? And I always find myself kind of in the middle thinking we focus so much on that part of it that we're not focused on the crazy part. This is something that maybe we ought to start taking a look at. I have no problem with most people purchasing guns. I got problems with crazy people that have access to them. So what do we do about that? And as this debate has gone on, I've kind of chided people on the right side of the argument. Let's just call it the right, right and left. Let's just use those handy labels. Let's say, the Second Amendment supporters, gun aficionados, if you will. And I've always kind of confronted them with, okay, look, let's find a way that you can live with, that you're fine with, that helps us reduce crazy people shooting people up in public. Now, one response to that is, well, we need to arm more people. Everybody needs to have guns. Oh, great. Now we can have random psychos and crossfire. No, let's not do that solution. Okay? And besides, it won't work. But regardless, I don't think that's a meaningful solution. Is there any other solution we could broach here that allows you and me, normal, law-abiding, wonderful Americans, to be able to go and enjoy our Second Amendment rights, that can also somehow reduce us being the number one country in the world by far when it comes to mass shootings and gun deaths? And that's what I want to hear. I want to hear discussions of how we reduce kids and, college students being shot up in public places. That's where I'm at. Okay. I'm not into taking people's guns. I'm into stopping people from getting guns if they're crazy and intend to cause harm to people. So it never seems to get to that part of the discussion. And sometimes I've chided people by saying, look, if your argument is that the price of Second Amendment freedom is that we occasionally have to have a shot up classroom, I can accept that. If that's your argument, because at least it's logically consistent and true, right? At least you're saying, yes, it's a tragedy that these kids got shot up, but hey, that's freedom, baby. Freedom's messy. You want to have a place where people don't have the freedom to access guns willy-nilly at the Walmart or whatever. Move to Canada, move to Europe or whatever, right? So it totally blew my mind today to find out that finally somebody advanced that argument. Joe the plumber. Do you remember Joe the plumber? Wurzelbacher? During the McCain campaign, he was the everyman, Joe the plumber. Well, Joe the plumber, for some reason, people still listen to what he has to say. Joe the plumber said, quote, "Your dead kids don't trump my constitutional rights to have guns." All right. He's honest about it. My right to have guns, to get as many of them as I like, as often as I like, and to purchase as much ammunition as I like for those guns, occasionally means some random kids are going to get killed. Okay. Now at least you're honest about it, Joe. At least you're honest about it. So, I don't have any answers for this one. I kind of think guns are like drugs. Both guns and drugs should be regulated. And the level of harm possible to the self and society should dictate the level of regulation on these things. Like, I think all drugs should be legal, but legal ranges from aspirin, where anybody of any age can go to any convenience store and buy as much as they want, all the way up to morphine, where, you got to be, in surgery or you got to have a Schedule 2 prescription, a lot of medical assistance to get to that. Aspirin to morphine, right? Hell, I'm sorry. Caffeine to morphine. Let's take it further down. Even before aspirin, you got caffeine that we pump into so many different drinks and other items. So I think all drugs should be legal, from caffeine to morphine. It's just, the more harmful drugs ought to be more toward morphine, and the less harmful drugs ought to be toward caffeine. Pot ought to be down there toward the caffeine side of things. Methamphetamine maybe ought to be somewhere closer to the morphine side. But they should all be legal. They shouldn't be restricted to the people, because the people that want to have them are going to have them anyway, and you cause more harm stopping them from trying to get it. Well, I have a similar theory on guns. Guns should be legal. And in America they are, right? But they should be legal on a spectrum, right? Like, you want to get a BB pistol or a .22, right? Well, that's like 18 and up, man. You're 18 years old, you can have one of those. You want to start getting things that can cause more damage more quickly to society, and you want to have more and more of them so that you can form your own little army? Well, maybe that ought to have some more intensive background checks involved. Maybe there ought to be some, higher hurdles to clear. And it's always bothered me that this hasn't been sold as a masculinity issue, right? Like, the way the gun industry markets now is like, we'll take your man card, right? This gun will give you your man card. You'll be a man, right? Which I never understood how that was, any value when anybody could do it. You're just 18, 21, whatever the age is, and you can get what you want. How does that make you a man? But if you had to go through a training regime and had to be tested every year, and only the most elite could pass that test, and again, we're talking to have your high-end, weapons of multiple person destruction end, you ought to be more elite. You ought to be a higher level sportsman than that, than just the average Joe Blow who can buy a .22 to go shoot at cans. And I don't understand why gun people don't get behind that, this graduated level of gun ownership where only the best trained and most elite people could have that. I mean, it sounds almost like a well-regulated militia, almost. But anyway, that's a little too logical, isn't it? All right, that's enough. We got to get off the warpath. talked enough about non-weed related things. I get myself in trouble. When we come back, I'm going to wrap up some of the other weed stories that got through the cracks while I was on Memorial Day weekend holiday. Hope you had a good holiday too. Gonna visit Seattle this weekend. If you're in Seattle this weekend, maybe we can say howdy. Be right back after this.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Ever wonder how often to change your bong water? The most effective method for baking pot brownies? The best destinations for a ganja getaway? How to hide herb in your car? Whether to grow your own? How precisely to legalize it? Or how something as wonderful as marijuana ever got to be illegal in the first place? Finally, you can find all these answers and much more in the official High Times Pot Smoker's Handbook, featuring 420 things to do when you're stoned. Since 1974, High Times Magazine has covered marijuana in all its aspects and wonders, from cultivation to legalization to the herb's enduring and exalted place in popular culture. Packed with inside information, the official High Times Pot Smoker's Handbook rolls all of this collected wisdom together into a single indispensable ganja guide, including an entertaining look at marijuana's history, profiles of herb-friendly travel destinations and festivals, favorite potluck recipes from the High Times staff, smoking skills, advocacy and activism, essential marijuana movies and songs, profiles of famous cannabis strains, comprehensive growing information, celebrity endorsements, and much more. This is truly, finally, the ultimate guide to green living.
Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation, America's #1 daily call-in show for the cannabis community. Every weekday at 4 and 7 Pacific on 420radio.org. New Approach Oregon is a coalition of Oregon citizens who believe that treating marijuana use as a crime has failed, costing taxpayers millions in law enforcement resources. We believe it's time for a new approach on marijuana and that Oregonians deserve a chance to decide in the 2014 general election. Our approach will regulate, tax, and legalize marijuana for adults in Oregon. By implementing a strict system to regulate, tax, and legalize marijuana, we can move Oregon forward and create new revenue for critical services. Under our approach for 2014, 40% of funds would support K-12 education, 20% would support mental health and treatment services, and 15% would be dedicated to law enforcement. Public opinion, coupled with victories in Washington and Colorado, confirms marijuana legalization is inevitable. Visit our website at newapproachoregon.com or our page on Facebook at New Approach Oregon. Thank you.
Fresh. Yeah. Mr. Green.
We back. We back. Fresh. Wes.
Yeah, the music from Wes Green. Get Fresh 3. Welcome back. It's Toker Talk Radio. Just winding up the hour here with a few of the marijuana stories that slipped beneath the radar while we were out this 3-day weekend. Some interesting stories out there, including this one on NPR. Miles Bryan on NPR on May 24th put up this story, Pot Vape Pens, the crack cocaine of marijuana. Yeah, scary, huh? So, how many ways do we have to debunk that hash oil is not the crack cocaine of anything? For one, crack cocaine can kill you, and hash oil cannot. But it's like saying, heavy cream is the crack cocaine of 2% milk, or it's ridiculous other things. And they had some of these in the comments. I had some great folks, some great comments in here that whiskey, the crack cocaine of beer, balsamic reduction, the crack cocaine of gastronomy, heavy cream, the crack cocaine of 2% milk. This is great stuff. Let me see if I can find, there was another one in here. Jelly, the crack cocaine of blackberries. Red hot toothpicks, the crack cocaine of cinnamon. Sugar, the crack cocaine of the sugarcane plant. Salt, the crack cocaine of ocean water. Maple syrup, the crack cocaine of Vermont. hot sauce, the crack cocaine of chili peppers. It just goes on and on and on. Oh, it is funny, but it does show a frame that the drug prohibitionists are trying to put BHO into. They're trying to put hash oil into this scary frame, using the same tactics as crack cocaine was meant to demonize cocaine in general. And here it is, folks. The crack cocaine thing was all about race. It was all about folks in the inner city that could get a cheaper high, get it in a more easily deliverable, easily smuggleable, easily hideable, cheap high. And then that was demonized as this terrible drug coming out of the inner cities, pointed mostly toward black folks, some toward Latino folks. And I have a feeling this hash oil thing is some of the same demonizing that's happening. And I'll only just note that the person they say that that they interviewed here for how strong the hash oil was has a Hispanic last name, Cesar Perez, right? So I didn't actually hear it, but I'm reading the transcript here. And this is just part of what bothers me here is they say, oh, it's like, doing 50 shots of alcohol, or it's like smoking 20 joints, trying to overblow what this really is. But this is the thing. Mark Kleiman is interviewed in this. Now, Mark Kleiman was the guy who was Washington State's marijuana advisor. He's a public policy professor at University of California, Los Angeles. And he says, a puff of cannabis is not standard the way a drink is standard, right? If you've had 3 beers, you know how much beer and alcohol you've had. If you've had 3 hits, you don't know anything about how much cannabis you've had. How come these people don't understand the self-titration of inhaled cannabis? Yes, we know how much we've had because cannabis affects us immediately after inhaling it. This 3 beers, oh, you had 3 beers, you know how much beer you've had. Well, that ranges from what? A 3.2 Budweiser to like a 12% IPA in some of these craft beers. You don't know how much how much alcohol you've gotten. Beer ranges from, like I said, 3.5% to 12% in some respects. Up here in the Pacific Northwest, if you're getting a beer that's any less than 5%, you're feeling ripped off. And if you've had a beer, well, is that beer coming in a pint glass? Is it coming in an 8-ounce glass, 16-ounce glass? How big a glass is that coming in? And when you're drinking that beer, you have to wait until your body metabolizes that alcohol before you know how drunk you are. That's how people end up too drunk. Oh, it was that last shot. Because they hadn't waited for the first 4 shots to hit them before they took the 5th one. You don't have that effect with cannabis, even when we're talking about dabs. Now, we're talking about dabs and BHO. Someone who's new, who tries to take a big hit like they would take off of a joint, is probably going to find themselves in a bit of distress, probably going to feel a little too high, like they took on too much. But that is something that can also be titrated. If people just educate them and let them know not to take a big hit on the first hit, they will feel how much they've gotten. And in fact, the people that are feeling the distress from the big hits, that's telling you right there that they're feeling it immediately and not continuing on to the 2nd or 3rd big hit like they would continue on with the 2nd or 3rd beer. So I'm just getting a little tired of all of these commentators talking about marijuana, A, as if it's something brand new, and B, as if it's something that's somehow analogous to alcohol in any way. It's partially our fault. We said treat it like alcohol, so we're kind of suffering some from that. Now, in other news, Raleigh, North Carolina lawmaker files a bill to legalize cannabis oil, another CBD-only state, where the sponsor says, I am adamantly opposed to marijuana, to the legalization of marijuana. This is a hemp oil bill that's high in CBD, which is the healing part of the brain. CBD is the healing part of the brain, folks. But it's very low on THC, less than 0.3%. You can drink a whole bottle of it and never get high. And in another quote, he says, this is not medical marijuana. You're right. I completely agree. Well, that's all the time we got here for Hour 2 Toker Talk Radio. Thanks for joining us. We replay at 4 and 7 a.m. and p.m. Pacific Time, Monday through Friday. Also, check us out on the Russ Belville Show the hour before this one, Airs live at 3 p.m. Pacific Time. Replays at 3, 6, and 9 a.m. and p.m. For everyone here at 420radio.org, thanks for joining us. Coming up next, Electric Bob's Boogaloo with experimental hip-hop. And then at 8 p.m., you've got electronic hip-hop, a new episode coming up at 8 o'clock. I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us again. And until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down.